my pet hobby, if you want to call it that, over the years I've amassed quite a lot of guitars, vintage guitars. I'm nuts about, electric guitars, American guitars from the 50s, 60s, Gibson, Fender, and Rickenbacker mainly. I'm a big fan of their history, and I'm really, really, and I'll always zero in on anything I see on YouTube that deals with those years from those companies. And there's a lot of enthusiasts out there, just like me. But because XTC is not a guitar band per se, people overlook the fact that there are guitar players in that band. They're really, really more concentrated on the songs. Me not being a songwriter, I've very rarely interviewed on that subject, but never ever has anyone called me up to say, let's talk about your guitars, Dave, how you came by them, what they are, how many you've got, where they, what are your favorites, all this kind of stuff. So I am sort of a secret guitar nerd, but specific to a historical context of and the American thing. That's my hobby really, and I can talk for hours about various specs and model changes and all the nerdy stuff.
Listen to the vibes.
Well, to be fair, I've been out of XTC for longer than I was in it. It's 25 years now since I left the band. But of course, we've got this huge catalogue that Andy Partridge has been curating and remixing, mainly for 5.1 audio. So we've been lucky enough to have secured the services of Stephen Wilson, who's this amazing musician and engineer and studio guy and big name in British prog right now. And he loves the band, so he's more than happy to do these remixes and remastering, as I say, mainly for 5.1, but at the same time, there's a whole bunch of bonus stuff comes with these releases. And there's a new stereo mix as well. That I'm particularly pleased with this album because this is the Big Express I'm referring to. I was never really 100% in its corner as a listening experience when it came out. I wasn't its biggest fan for many years. But now Stephen has done something to it that he's kind of, just warmed everything up, done a bit of weeding, and made a really nice special stereo, new 24-bit stereo master, as well as the 5.1. And there's a whole bunch of bonus stuff, as demos and instrumental tracks. And there's even, this immersive Dolby Atmos mix as well, if you have a system in your house. Those half dozen people out there who might have that system installed. Anyway, it's all there. It's 39 years old and doesn't look a day over 5 years old. Actually, it does sound amazing for something that was done such a long time ago. So I'm very happy with it.
And it's got a Blu-ray disc that comes with it, right?
Yeah, that's where all the bonus stuff is on the Blu-ray. So you need a Blu-ray player to listen to it. Unfortunately, I can only play Blu-ray through my TV set, and that's just getting pretty old now. But I can hear the stuff. It's perfectly audible, but it's not hi-fi. It's hi-fi for some folks, but not for me at this point. I'm just happy with the new stereo mix, which is a delight. I'm really, really pleased with that. And I've kind of discovered new stuff about this record that I wasn't previously aware of. It's just mainly the standard of the songwriting as much as anything else. So I think Andy was really onto something with a lot of the stuff that he wrote for this record. And I think this finally been done full justice.
What did you find the most significant about making the Big Express back in 1984?
Biggest drain on our financial resources was always studio costs. So it's a question of, how can we do this record? We're not touring, we're not actually making any money, we're not actually selling records in significant numbers, really to pay enough bills. So for this record, let's see if we can cut costs and find a cheaper studio that we can maybe spend a little more time in to get this record a little more polished than we might otherwise have to spend in a bigger studio. So basically, this is how we found in Bath, which is a city not far from where we live in Swindon. We could drive to and from this place, Crescent Studios, which was run by a guy called David Lord, who's a producer who'd worked with Peter Gabriel. And we thought, well, this might be a good option for us. We can drive to and from the studio every day. It's not as expensive as the residential studios. And so we did a Christmas single, Christmas '83. We did a single as the Three Wise Men called Thanks for Christmas. We worked with David at this little studio as a sort of test run, if you like. And that worked fine. You know, he's a really good musician, a great, nice fellow. We got on well together. And we did this 45. So we thought, right, well, 1984 is just around the corner. We've got a new album to make. Why don't we give this guy a go and work at his place? So that was really the starting point. Crescent Studios, tiny place in Bath, and we drove to and from the studio every day from our homes in Swindon. It started out with a good intention of saving money, but I mean, the sessions just went on and on into the year. You know, I think we were still working on it in the summer. It went through a number of different. We had to mix at a London studio, Rack Studios, because we ran out of time with David. He had other projects to get on with, and I think after 3 months, he had to move on. So we had to find a place to mix the album. So we went to London and mixed it with a guy called Phil Thornalley, who has since gone on to much bigger and more financially viable things with Bryan Adams mainly. He did a lot of work with him later. But that was how basically just finally we went through the usual problems of the record company. We don't hear a single, have you got any more material? We haven't got, They eventually ended up releasing 3 singles from it. And so it all kind of, but none of the, as I say, none of the singles were hits. That's really what the problem was, as is common with XTC. We were always kind of trying to follow up Senses Working Overtime from the English Settlement album a couple of years previous, which had been a top 10 record in this country. But we never actually was able to follow it up with anything significantly as big. So, yeah, the album came out and it disappeared within a couple of weeks, unfortunately, and was largely forgotten about by all but the hardcore XTC fanatics. And there's a lot of people that really stand by that record today and say, it's one of the best things we ever did, even back then. And so now I can hear possibly what they were listening to, which I missed at the time. We were just about to embark, as fate sort of intervened, and we had this opportunity to do this daft psychedelic project, Dukes of Stratosphere. Within weeks of the Big Express being released, we were back in the studio with John Leckie doing that. And that kind of turned everything around for XTC, bizarrely. We turned a corner with that record. So we kind of left Big Express where it was and went forward with a more sort of Paisley Undergroundy type of thing. And that eventually led to working with Todd Rundgren. And he produced a hit record, America, which is what the record company did.
Of all the albums, why did y'all decide to do the Big Express like this? I know you've had some remixes in the past, but nothing to this extent.
We have. They have been that we've done maybe four albums now that have been remixed and remastered. But this one is the one, for some reason, I don't know why, but the record distributors are anxious for us to promote this. So I think there's just been more of a push towards promoting this and getting the word out to people. Maybe it's because it is the one that has been enhanced most significantly. It's actually been upgraded quite a long way from the original mix and master. So maybe that's why they've decided to push it a bit harder. But we've done, previously we've done the Non Such album from 92, Oranges and Lemons from 1989, and Drums and Wires and Black Sea, which were the early ones. Steve Lillywhite produced. They've all been remixed and remastered, but they haven't been promoted quite as heavily as this one has. I don't know why that is. I'm just guessing. I think maybe it's time we took this band to the bank. I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm happy that people are aware of it. And anyone who's mildly curious, I urge them to take a listen, because it's not at all bad. It doesn't sound like a record that's 39 years old, in my opinion.
You've got some hardcore fans that have stuck with y'all from the beginning, but are you seeing maybe a new interest in XTC?
Yeah, all the time. Thanks mainly to the internet. That's really rebooted our fortunes, because we're getting people now. Well, for example, last week I did an interview with a local reporter who works on a local newspaper, who, I mean, he wasn't even born when I quit the band. He got into the band via his parents, who were big XTC fans, and he, grew up listening to the music as a child. And he's now totally in our core. He loves the music, everything we did. He's, bought everything we've done since. And now he's working as a professional journalist on a local paper. So he's about to produce a nice tribute feature. But, that he's just typical of the fact that there are still people being exposed to music, and they latch onto it, because we were never going to be a mainstream band. We were always too quirky and too off-center. It was always a constant frustration to the record company that they couldn't get us a big hit. But we were never going to be the mainstream pop act that they hope. Like, I don't know, the Human League or Culture Club or any of the other bands that were on the label at the time, who made it really, really big. XTC were never going to be one of those bands. We're too odd. But that oddness now, I think, is kind of, with the passing of time, people are more prepared to give it some attention and a bit more time to get into it. And as I say, who knows what young people are listening to now? There's generations have come and gone since we made the record. It's great that there are still people prepared to listen, and once they've listened, if they like it, they'll go back and buy everything. We're one of those bands. Once you get the XTC thing, you want everything. And it's the same with, for example, I can name Todd Rundgren. I've mentioned him earlier. I was mildly curious about his work until I heard the album The Hermit of Mink Hollow. That threw me straight into his work, to his music. I thought every song on the record was just brilliant. So then, of course, I had to work backwards slowly. There's a big catalogue of stuff to discover, and every album I was thinking, oh, how did I miss this? This guy's a genius. He is a genius. And I needed to, I should have gotten into this music a lot sooner than I did. And I still feel that way about him. I just think he's a brilliant, brilliant man, underrated, totally underrated, but still with us and still going strong,
With the band changing from album to album, because it's hard pressed to find two albums by XTC that sound alike. How do you think you held on to the fans as well as you did? Because not a lot of bands can do that.
That's true. Well, it's like I say, once you're into the mindset, then you become sort of feeling like that band is almost like part of the family. And you accept those other family members for all their flaws, as well as their attributes. And you go along with it, and you just accept them for who they are. I mean, the things we've had, sort of people saying, when for example, when Terry Chambers left the band in 1982, and we put Mama album out the following year, people were scratching their chins. Oh, I don't know about this. This isn't. They've lost it. It's not. But they came around. Basically, eventually, they came around. They said, "Oh, we should have listened more closely." Some of the naysayers, not all of them, but some of them would have sort of maybe taken a step back and saying, "Oh, I'm not sure if I like this," but they nearly always came back eventually. But we were just lucky. We just had an original stance that people were able to. They were prepared to give it time, because not all of the music was instantly likable, and some of it might well have been off-putting. But just give the music a chance. I used to say, just give people a chance to listen to the album 4 or 5 times, and they'll get it. But a lot of people will hear just, a couple of tracks and think, no, this isn't for me, and they'll move on. That's fair enough, because I do it myself. And it's kind of human nature, really.
Now you've got the CD, the Blu-ray, but I noticed that you've got a booklet. What's coming in the booklet?
The booklet is just liner notes and a few photographs that were taken at the time in the studio. Basically, with my camera. I think most of the pictures were either taken by myself or Andy, or from an old 35mm camera. But there aren't very many pictures. The booklet is really just, normal CD sleeve notes, but sort of packaged up a little bit more. And there's a lot of information there about, recording details and because there's a lot of demos that came from Andy and Colin of their private, little cassettes, basically mastered from cassettes. And there's unfinished material as well that we never got round to recording. It's just, it's the kind of stuff that fans devour. And it is really, if you're going to spend that much money on a Blu-ray package, then you're a fan and you don't actually mind spending the money because of all the bits and bobs that come with it, all the little extras. Those are the magic trinkets that all fans love to have. Not essential listening for everybody, that's for sure. But it's just nice, when you put out a package like this, it's nice to cram as much trivial information together with the good stuff, just because fans like to have it, and it paints a fuller picture. Really, it gives another perspective on the recording process and on the record itself.
So the extra tracks on there, is that stuff that didn't make it on the album originally?
Yeah, a lot of it is. I'm not sure how many. Some of them were tracks that we started and never they were never, they were just maybe just basic guitar and drums that we started recording with David Lord down at Crescent Studios, but were never developed for one reason or another. Either we ran out of time or they weren't considered up to scratch as songs. And then there's a whole heap of demos. Andy was the one who did most of the demo, and there's songs that were never. You may be aware that he put out a big compilation of his demos called Fuzzy Warbles. It was a huge compendium of rough recordings that he'd done at home of songs that would eventually be, to show up on albums. And these are a few that he either overlooked or hadn't considered worthy of inclusion in the Fuzzy Warbles series. But there are quite a lot of songs that I hadn't even heard. And some of them are a little bit, there's stuff missing, the tape broke, or he'd drop in halfway through, or he would have erased half the song by accident, stuff like that. Just little trinkets, little snippets. It's all grist to the mill of what fans like to hear or like to have in their possession. It sort of just adds to the family atmosphere, if you like. But yeah, there's some stuff there that even the biggest fans won't have heard before. Some people, they're voracious cassette collectors, and they'll buy stuff for sale I've seen on eBay of real rare stuff, culled from, I don't know, generations down of cassette copies of copies of copies that people are just proud to have and share. So hopefully these have been properly professionally mastered. They're still fairly basic and rough and ready recordings, but they are at least presented in a form that's, you can listen to.
Have you written any songs?
Songs, no. I write a lot of music. but I'm not a songwriter. I'm not, and I'm definitely not a singer either. I think that's probably why I stick with guitar and keyboards when necessary. And I've been just lucky enough to be a sideman in a really, really interesting band. I mean, this is the thing about XTC. Three odd people making music together. You've got one guy who's writing songs in his sleep, brilliant songwriter, and a really original thinker. And that was, that's a gift to any musician who works with an artist like that, to have that much scope. You were talking about earlier, how did we get away with all these changes of style from album to album? We just went with where the songs were taking us. They were that good, and you'd have to be pretty damn silly to mess those songs up, most of them. So I was very, very fortunate in that I had this amazing platform from which to work my skills, either on guitar or piano or whatever. But as a songwriter, no, I'm not a songwriter, but I've got loads of music sort of waiting for lyrics and a voice. But so far, nothing doing, sorry.
But you got into arranging music.
Yeah, so kind of. I do a lot of strings. In fact, I'm working on a string arrangement now. I've done a couple this year. Most recently, I did there's an Irish songwriter called Thomas Walsh, if you're aware of him, but he was in a band called Pugwash, and he's finally released a solo record. The Rest is History, it's called. And he called me up and asked if I'd do a string arrangement for one of the songs on this record. And he had a budget, and we went to Abbey Road for a day and recorded the strings in Studio 2, which is fantastic. It doesn't get any better than that. And it's, as I say, it worked really well. And he's such a lovely man. And again, a really, really gifted songwriter. Really, he should be much, much better known than he is. So I've got the CD right here. I'm sure you won't mind me promoting it. I should be promoting the big Express reissue. But as a side issue, as a sidebar, here's Thomas's album. Go buy it. It's lovely. It's brilliant. Bunch of songs, great production. And it's got a string arrangement by me on it, recorded at Abbey Road. So yeah, and now I'm working with a group called Vanilla, who are from the Pacific Northwest, and they've got me working on a couple of string sessions as well. I tend to shy away from string arranging because it's expensive for the artist. They have to hire musicians and studios, and it can be a lengthy process. Or at least I find it a lengthy and laborious process. So I don't come cheap. So if you've got money to spend and some decent material, then I might agree to do a string arrangement. But I don't go out of my way looking for that sort of work because it's time consuming and laborious, and the art, it has to, it's going to cost the artist a lot of money basically if you want it done properly. But it's always quite rewarding once it's finished. And as I say, have the pleasure of working at Abbey Road in Studio 2 is as good as it gets. So I'm very, very fortunate there.
Was that an experience walking into Abbey Road Studios?
Oh boy, yeah, first time. I mean, I've worked there quite a lot with various artists in the last 20 years or so. But the first time I walked in there, I mean, it was just like being hit by ghosts. I mean, the studio was empty. Just walking up the stairs into the building. I mean, that was something. You'd see these photographs of the Beatles sitting on the steps. They were here. It actually happened. You walk through the corridor, and there's this studio smell that comes with it. Just this sort of exclusive, luxurious aroma. So you go down the stairs, and you open the big double doors, and there it is, this magic room. And the pianos. There were three. There's the old Bechstein upright, and the little Challen lounge pianos. And you know, those are the same instruments that played the big chord at the end of A Day in the Life. And you just think they're still here after all this time. 30 years has gone by and they're still here. And in fact, 50 years has gone by now, 60 nearly. Those instruments are still there and they're still being used. And I just found the whole ambience of the place. I did an album with a singer called Mark Owen in the late 90s from Take That, very, very big boy band in this country. And he did a solo record that I was lucky enough to be involved with. And we did the whole thing at Abbey Road. And sitting in that studio too with a guitar, and you just think, you know, you don't want to record this now. I don't want to leave this place. This is the most perfect spot on planet Earth. Leave me here, please. But that's the kind of feeling you get. And it is, there's an ambience, and I'm sure it's not just because of its history. It's the sound of that room hasn't changed in all this time. It's just a miracle.
What's your philosophy on music?
Does it bring me pleasure or does it not? If it doesn't, I'll move on and listen to something else. I don't really have any hardcore philosophy. I just love music, and I always have. I just feel blessed that I've been able to live my life for as long as I have, doing what I love doing most. I mean, how many people get that lucky? I mean, you have to bring something, but at the same time, you require a lot of good fortune. And meeting Andy and Colin and joining that group in 1979, that pretty much defines my life. I never really, I always dreamt of being a professional musician and spending my life making music. But I never really was sure that was going to happen. Even after I joined the band in the first year, I still felt like I was on probation and that it would all end very quickly, as quickly as it had begun. I'd reckoned without Andy Partridge's resourceful nature as an artist and as a songwriter, and the fact that he determined to keep the band going. Because I thought at some point, you know, I'll be replaced by somebody, you know, more qualified. But no, he wanted to keep it local and friendly, and that's what made it work. You know, the three of us and all the drummers that we used after Terry quit have been brilliant. We've been so lucky with them, and the producers as well. We've just had an immense amount of luck from an artistic side of things, even if it didn't translate immediately into sales. Now, but going back to your question, my philosophy on music is basically, does it bring me joy or does it not? If it doesn't, then if a reliable source assures me that it's worth pursuing, then I'll listen a lot harder, or I'll wait until I'm mature enough to get it, because that's another thing. I have a pile of records behind me here. A lot of this stuff I bought used at car boot sales, very, very cheaply, 50 pence a pound each, with just out of curiosity, to think, oh, I passed over this record at the time it was out because it wasn't what I was into at the time. Maybe now, after all these years, I'll get what the music was all about, which is actually what's happened. So now I've got this little, you know, in order to listen to all this stuff again and reassess it, I make a point of every 10 years, going back to 60 years, I have them all listed and catalogued. So 60 years ago in November, I've got maybe half a dozen albums, with the Beatles being most significant of all of them. And I'll listen again and hear, what have I missed from this? Well, you know, it's the early days of albums, 1963. Bands didn't make albums, not as albums. They were just a collection of a couple of singles and a bunch of B-sides, if you're lucky. But, you know, it's fascinating to and now 50 years, you know, 1973 is now 50 years ago. I find that incredible. 50 years has gone by since the heyday of, you know, for me, 73, 70, I would say 72 through to 74, 75 started to tail off. That's really where music meant it most to me as a listener. I was 20 years old, so I was just kind of growing into adulthood, and everything was fresh and new, and it's the age of discovery and all that. But it's 50 years ago, but it still sounds great, and I still enjoy listening to it. And I've sort of picked up on stuff that I would have, dismissed at the time, but have now come around to enjoying a lot more than I did when I was at, the age that I was when it came out.
What's been the greatest hurdle in your life?
Well, I don't tend to dwell on it, but I suppose developing diabetes at the age of 16 kind of put a continuous brake on my life. I try not to blame it for, my failings and everything, but it certainly has had an effect, and I have to, fine tune it, and it's high maintenance basically, but I've got around it, and I mean, I can't really imagine. I can't remember what life was like before I went down with this thing. So it's just become part of what defines me, I suppose. But it's something that I've always had to take into serious consideration with whatever it is I embark upon. Because if I let it get out of control, then I don't function. I can't play guitar. I get very, very miserable and depressed. So I have to keep that, over time, the treatment and everything has improved beyond measure from when I was first diagnosed. So it's easier to monitor and take control of now than it's ever been. But it's always going to be there. And, I know other musicians who are type 1 diabetics who are way, way better than I am, and always will be. So I cannot blame diabetes for any shortcomings I might have as a musician. But it's always there, so that's a hurdle. And then there are always, there's the usual frustrations of having worked a long time on a record project, only to see it dismissed and fail, even though it's had great reviews and a lot of fan worship, hasn't converted into sales. That can be a little bit, well, disheartening, shall we say? And then you just sort of go, well, you stand back and think, well, yeah, maybe you could have done a better job with such and such, or that needn't have done this, that, the other. So we always had this thing, let's make sure every album we make is going to be, better than the previous one. That was basically the modus operandi of the XTC logic. And that presents, its own problems. So that's a hurdle as well, making sure we improve on past mistakes and being able to identify what could be improved. I mean, I think it's just, again, after now that Andy and his team have been reissuing these albums, and we've seen the love and the new fans that have come on as a result of that, maybe it was just a case of we were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And maybe now is our time. Better late than never, as they say. So who knows? I'm like I said before, I can't complain. I shouldn't really complain about any hurdles at all, because I'm still here, still making music, and I'm actually solvent now. I don't really have to worry too much about paying my energy bills or income tax or anything like that. So I'm very, very lucky. I've no business complaining about anything at this point.
Well, what moment in your life has impacted you the most?
What's this? Well, I don't know. Perhaps being 10 years old when the Beatles broke, because that really was just injected this need to do something like that, to make music that was that exciting and have that sort of effect on other people. You know, I mean, as a kid, you've got these massive dreams, impossible dreams, really, if we're honest. And you just dream of one day, you know, being that good, being that brilliant, and that kind of, you know, I'm wondering what life how it would have turned out were it not for the Beatles. And I'm probably speaking for most people of my generation. Even the fact that, you know, I've got this haircut. It's the other thing, you know, men didn't wear long hair. It wasn't the done thing. And the Beatles, when they arrived, their hair probably wasn't as long as this is now. And yet that was seen as subversive. And it was just all part and parcel of their charm, and how they were prepared to be different, and they were brave enough to be different because they were so brilliant at what they did. I would think, yeah, that's going to be it's going to be up there.
What's been the highlight of your career so far?
The highlight would probably be, well, I've done. There's been a number of highlights. One of the more recent ones, I was in a group called Big Big Train. I hope you're familiar with them. Very, very prog rock. This is going back into the mid. I quit 2020, so I was with them for 11 years, 2009 to 2020, and it just started as a bedroom project, and ended up as this festival headliner. And we played this festival in Germany, the Lorelei Night of the Prog, 2018. We were headlining on the Friday night. And as a live gig, as a live playing experience, I think that probably transcended because the band was really on fire. We'd worked so hard for such a long time. It's gradually been building up to this point. But it was only like our sixth gig, and yet within those, and they were spaced out over a period of years. So to have got to that level after just 6 shows, and to have converted an entire festival crowd to Big Big Train, and done it in such style, that meant something to me. And I got a real sense of achievement, along with all the other musicians, because there were 13 of us on the stage. So it wasn't like a solo project by any means. That was a band that had worked really hard over a number of years. And it was really gratifying to have got to that point and converted so many people. And of course, it was David Longdon, the late David Longdon, our dear friend who unfortunately left us 2 years ago this week. It was his finest moment, really. He was just magnificent, and so really, it's a great tribute to him. But I was very, very happy with that performance, and it's available on a Blu-ray called "Summer Shall Not Fade," which I believe is still available. But it's a great show. If you like prog rock, go buy that. Guitar solos, where XTC were concerned, were kind of not encouraged. It wasn't. Only if it was going to be part of the song would Andy tolerate that. He never really promoted himself as a guitar player, and I guess he see no reason why he should promote me as a guitar player either. We were there to do justice to the songs, and I was more than happy to do that. No problem with that. But I did get to actually think more carefully about if there was an opportunity for a solo, think very carefully about what you're going to do with it. Don't just noodle around and muck about. Work something out, write it down, practice it, learn it, make it part of the song. That was a very important discipline for me. And I took that into Big Big Train as well. I always would always write out a solo and band to play it before committing it to tape. So I kind of, you can go to any bar really and see guitar players just noodling away and playing blues phrases and just enjoying themselves, which is what it's all about, I suppose. But I think it's going to have a more lasting effect if you write something that's part of the song and is going to resonate, for longer than text to play.
Now, where can people purchase this album?
Well, now you're asking me. I don't know.
Okay.
I would suggest.
Well, I'll put the link. I do
That's
have a link.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe we should both have researched this a little better before. No,
Well,
because I get sent all my stuff, I don't have to go shopping for it. I think
gotcha.
No, I'll tell you where you can buy it. Burning Shed. Burning Shed is a website in the UK, and there's a whole heap of stuff. Their website is a little bit confusing. I have to say that. It's time they sorted that out. But apart from that, they're good people, and they have a great catalogue of stuff. But in the UK, I'm pretty sure you can buy in the States as well directly from them. I'm pretty sure they have an international shipping system. So Burning Shed is where you should go.
I will put the links to purchase the album in the description. And if you don't mind, I will put your Facebook page in the description.
Yes, by all means. Yes, if you like.
Mr. Gregory, I cannot thank you enough for coming on my show. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, Kyle. Nice to meet you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
I can see you're a man of considerable taste. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Always welcome, man. And also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, well, I hope you'll come back. Hit that subscribe button. For my regulars, you guys rock because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network